Hi there, I'm Jen, this is Remembered Reads, and this is going to be day one of the 12 Days of Litmas, which is a 12-day video challenge of sorts that Adrian from Stripped Cover Lit created. I will link to his announcement video below. The day one prompt, which was actually supposed to come out yesterday, but I ended up redoing this video because I was going to do one for 5 days and that would be too long. So prompt number one is to name your favorite poem. When I've done tags that include a favorite poem question, I usually default and say Wilfred Owen's Strange Meeting, which is obviously one of his war poems and is the one that starts, "It seemed that out of battle I escaped down some profound dull tunnel long since scooped through granites which titanic wars had groined," etc. It's the "I am the enemy you killed" poem. And I feel like that's slightly cheating because it's so well referenced that it's one of those poems that if you know, you can recognize all of these book titles, fiction and nonfiction, because they reference that poem. I think Susan Hill has a novel that's called Strange Meeting. Niall Ferguson's The Pity of War, which basically says if the Kaiser had won, it would just be like the European Union. So anyway, there was that novel that I didn't like last year that was The Steady Running of the Hour, which is another line from that poem. But it occurred to me that that is actually not the First World War poem that I reference the most in life. The actual poems that I kind of bring up and that my sister and I reference all the time are actually two of Siegfried Sassoon's poems. And I feel like Sassoon doesn't get mentioned as much as Wilfred Owen or Isaac Rosenberg or Rupert Brooke or any of the poets who died during the war. And I don't know if that's so much because he survived the war or if it's just because his poetry rhymed so clearly. So it seems less artistic in the way we think about it now, but I think that's kind of part of the charm of that very, what does it matter, those dreams from the pit? And it's very like a children's rhyme. So yeah, so the line from a poem that I think I reference the most, especially when I'm talking to my sister, is from Memorial Tablet, which is the "I died in hell, they called it Passchendaele." But as I was reevaluating, I think the reason we are able to reference that so much is sort of specifically a Belgian-Canadian thing, in that virtually every Canadian war memorial has Passchendaele on it. So you can walk down a street in downtown any city and make that reference. And also because our family in Belgium is from Kortrijk, which is just, I mean, if you go to the beach, you drive past Passchendaele. So normal people would probably not quite reference that as much. So I realized that the second most referenced poem that I always end up quoting is Bert's Gone Syphilitic, which is also from a Siegfried Sassoon poem, the one called They. So I'm going to read that. "The bishop tells us, when the boys come back they will not be the same, for they'll have fought in a just cause. They led the last attack on Antichrist. Their comrades' blood has bought new right to breed an honorable race. They've challenged death and dared him face to face. We're none of us the same," the boys reply, "for George lost both legs and Bill's stone blind. Poor Jim's shot through the lungs and like to die, and Bert's gone syphilitic. You'll not find a chap who served that hasn't found some change. And the bishop said, the ways of God are strange." So yeah, it has that rhythm that I think we associate with almost children's poetry. But, you know, so you want to smile, but it's incredibly depressing. While I am on the topic of war poetry, I'm going to link below to, one is a reading that I think David Suchet did for the BBC, which is of Siegfried Sassoon's Memorial Tablet, which is the one about a man drowning in mud at Passchendaele. And I will also link to 3 videos of Wilfred Owen's poetry that were done by Channel 4. One is Christopher Eccleston reading Dulce et Decorum Est, and 2 of them are Sean Bean reading Anthem for Doomed Youth, and also reading The Last Laugh. And if you haven't read Pat Barker's Regeneration trilogy, I'll also mention that both Siegfried Sassoon and Wilfred Owen are major characters in the first book. And there was a film made of this in the late 90s with James Wilby plays Siegfried Sassoon, which I would say is not a great movie on its own, but it is quite a good adaptation. It makes great use of Wilfred Owen's poem, The Parable of the Old Man and the Young, at the very end of the movie, to great effect, even though I don't think it's a great movie overall. If you're in the US, you might see copies of the DVD released under not the name Regeneration, but under the name Behind the Lines. Additionally, at least in the US, on Amazon Prime, you can stream Derek Jarman's film of Benjamin Britten's War Requiem, which uses a lot of Wilfred Owen's poetry interspersed with the kind of funeral mass. And you can see a very young Tilda Swinton and Sean Bean in that, because I think it's from the mid-80s. In any case, that is a quick mention of about 12 different poems that I could make an argument for being my favorite poem. That was the first day of Litmas. There will be another 11 days of this, one of which will actually go up this afternoon since clearly I'm a day late. The next few days are all going to be about First World War writing, so prepare yourselves. That's it for now. Ciao.